But it is an annual joke that fans of the franchise apparently love to make. It's also the 25th anniversary this year, the first prequel in the Star Wars saga, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It's been re-released in cinemas this weekend to celebrate and to mark the anniversary. Mark Hamill, of course, also known as Luke Skywalker, took the White House briefing yesterday. Let's have a look.
Star Wars to you, sir?
Well, you know, I called him Mr. President. He said, "You can call me Joe." And I said, "Can I call you Joby-Wan Kenobi?" He liked that. But listen, I'm not really here to dominate. I have to turn it back over to our wonderful press secretary, Corinne Jean-Pierre. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And may the 4th be with you. Now, finally, this half hour to one of the most read stories on the BBC News website and app. It involves the latest song from North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Let's take a listen. This is called Friendly Father. It's gone viral on TikTok with Gen Z users loving the synthy electro-pop apparently. Most, though, are probably oblivious to the Korean lyrics, which include "Let's sing Kim Jong-un, the great leader. Let's brag about Kim Jong-un, our friendly father." It is just the latest in a line of propaganda pop songs churned out by the communist state in the past 50 years. For many American users, the irony has not been lost on them that it's gone viral on Chinese-owned app, while US lawmakers are trying to ban it. Catchy or not, you decide. Time to take a look at the weather now. Here's Simon King.
Hello again. It's the bank holiday weekend, of course, and I think mixed is probably the right word to describe the weather over the course of the weekend, because while there'll be some warm, sunny spells for many of us, there'll also be some sunshine and showers as well. And this morning, certainly, it's been quite wet across parts of northern England into Northern Ireland. We'll continue with that rain, I think, in Northern Ireland into this afternoon. The risk of some showers, though, in the far northwest of Scotland with some sunny spells, and with the sunshine in the south, we may just see some showers popping off across the far southeast of England. Those could be heavy and thundery, but warm, sunny spells across many southern areas, temperatures 17, 18 degrees Celsius. We may once again have the warmest weather in the west of Scotland, 19 or 20 degrees. Now, through tonight, we'll continue with a bit of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, central southern Scotland, maybe a few thundery showers in the far northwest. Beneath the cloudier skies, temperatures down to about 9 to 11 degrees. But with a clearer skies, once again, quite a chilly night. Temperatures on Sunday morning starting off at about 4 to 6 degrees. Now, during Sunday, there was some cloud in Cornwall, parts of Devon, a few showers here, 1 or 2 showers developing elsewhere across England and Wales, but largely dry with sunny spells. Some heavier showers in the northeast of Scotland with some thunder, and maximum temperatures about 16 to 18 or 19 degrees. Once again, it will feel quite pleasant when the sun comes out. On into Bank Holiday Monday, we've got this weather front here across the south, and that's going to bring more cloud, some showers across southern areas of England, a few showers further north likely as well. And again, those could be heavy, maybe even a bit thundery into the afternoon. But for much of North Wales, the Midlands, into eastern areas of England, it looks largely dry. There'll be some sunny spells as well. Temperatures on Monday perhaps down a little bit, so 14 degrees there in Aberdeen, about 15, 16 Celsius further south and east across England. But going through the rest of the week, high pressure is building in. And when we see high pressure like this, certainly in the spring, it's looking dry, it's looking fairly sunny and actually quite warm as well. Temperatures will be responding quite nicely to that sunshine. So you can see here that the temperatures will start to rise 17 to 22 degrees Celsius by the end of the week into next weekend. So on the whole, a pretty settled week to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Live from London, this is BBC News. The CIA chief is in Cairo to try to help mediate a Gaza ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Rishi Sunak insists the Conservatives have everything to fight for, despite the party losing nearly half the seats contested in local elections. Labour's Keir Starmer says the results show his party is on course for a general election win.
If you look at the overarching picture and the purpose is to serve our country. This is the last stop before the general election, and we've made significant and very real progress.
And why a North Korean propaganda song has become a TikTok hit. Hello and welcome, I'm Samantha Simmonds. We start with the latest on the Israel-Gaza war as efforts to secure a deal for the release of hostages and a ceasefire in Gaza are intensifying. The head of the US Central Intelligence Agency, William Burns, is in Cairo to help to try to mediate a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Hamas negotiators have also arrived in Egypt for talks. Foreign mediators have been waiting for a response from the group to an Israeli proposal to halt the fighting for 40 days and to exchange hostages for Palestinian prisoners. Unconfirmed reports in US media say Israel has given Hamas a week to agree to the current proposal, or it will begin its long-threatened offensive in Rafah. But there has been widespread international concern over the fate of the more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering there. Our correspondent Anna Foster has more from Jerusalem. I asked her about the increasing pressure on Hamas to reach a deal.
Yeah, we're at the same stage, Samantha, where an Israeli deal has been put on the table. It was described at the start of the week by the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, as extraordinarily generous. And it seems to be that in this latest iteration of the deal, there had been some movement in terms of potentially agreeing to talk about a permanent ceasefire. Now, from Israel's point of view, of course, its priority at the moment is trying to ensure the release of all the remaining hostages that are being held in Gaza. One of Hamas's key priorities is to try and get some sort of agreement towards a permanent ceasefire rather than a temporary one. So while it seems that the two sides are moving closer together, there is still a disconnect, I think, on that point, and I think also on the number of hostages to be released. Now, originally we were told the number that was being talked about was around 40. Then the briefings were that that had come down to around 33. These are people who are in what's considered the humanitarian category, women, the elderly, and people who are suffering from particular medical conditions. Of course, the question is how many of those hostages Hamas actually has access to in Gaza and how many of them are still alive. Equally, the number of Palestinian prisoners who would be freed from Israeli jails, that number sounds like it's still being discussed as well. So while these proposals are on the table, while they were being welcomed at the start of the week as a step closer, the fact that the talks are going on is positive. I think the fact that William Burns, the head of the CIA, is in Cairo, again, is potentially a positive move because he, I think, is there to try and facilitate and iron out those last few details. But it's worth saying we've been in the last few months at this point before when things are looking good, when the sides are looking like they might agree and things crumble at the last minute. So that hope is always, I think, always a cautious hope rather than one, without sort of thinking about what could happen and how close things can get before they fall at the final hurdle.
And Anna, what more can you tell us about these US media reports that Israel has given Hamas a week to agree to a proposal, or it will begin its long-threatened offensive in Rafah?
Long threatened is absolutely right. President Benjamin Netanyahu has been talking about the Rafah offensive for months now, but even though we heard in the media several weeks ago that it had a date attached, that date has never been publicly confirmed. And there are questions really about whether or not that is a date or whether, of course, this continues to be part of Israel's leverage with the international community when it comes to actually reaching a deal. What we know is that the US government, in particular Israel's biggest military and diplomatic partner, is not wholly supportive of that Rafah offensive. Israel says it's essential if they're going to remove the last of Hamas from Gaza, but the US points to the fact that there are still around 1.4 million displaced people in Rafah. In terms of timings, could it be a week? Well, there are two things that need to happen. They need to move a large number of those people out of the way, back further north in the Strip, before they can start an offensive. And the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, would also need to move their brigades back into position inside Gaza for another ground offensive. So while we hear these reports of timings, I think until it actually starts, it's always incredibly hard to tell.
Anna Foster there. Rishi Sunak is insisting the Conservatives have everything to fight for, despite the party losing nearly half the seats contested in local elections in England. With results expected in several mayoral races today, the Tories will be hoping that Andy Street can cling on as mayor in the West Midlands, but they suffered a further loss in the East Midlands. Speaking at a rally to celebrate the election of Claire Ward as East Midlands mayor, Keir Starmer cited the win and victories in the Blackpool South by-election and the York and North Yorkshire mayoralty as evidence the party is on the last stop on the journey to power in Westminster.
Well, we have won significantly in all places across the country, whether that's by-elections, whether that's mayoralties, whether that's councils, and of course the police and crime commissioners. Now, in some places we didn't get all the votes that we wanted, and of course we will fight to get those votes back. But if you look at the overarching picture and the purpose is to serve our country. This is the last stop before the general election, and we've made significant and very real progress everywhere that we needed to do so. So I'm very pleased with that.
My colleague Regina Vaidyanathan and BBC Midlands political editor Rob Mayer are now in Birmingham at the West Midlands count.
Well, we're expecting the result of the mayoral contest here in the West Midlands sometime this afternoon. We don't know when exactly, but what we do know is it could be a really close result. Now, the incumbent mayor, the Conservative Andy Street, is hoping for a third term in the job. And throughout the campaign, Labour's Richard Parker has been pushing really hard. The Labour Party, for a long time, was really hopeful that it might take this mayoral seat from the Conservatives. Of course, we don't know what that result will be until the counting behind me has concluded, but we do know it's going to be very close. But some Labour sources have indicated that they may think that they might be closer than they think, and they may even lose to the Conservatives, partly because, as Harry was mentioning in his report, of Sir Keir Starmer's position when it comes to the ongoing conflict in Gaza. And that's actually also because one of the independent candidates for mayor here has been very, very firm in his position on the war in Gaza. He's used that as his platform, and there are some who believe that he could take votes away from the Labour Party. And in the end, that could leave Andy Street as the winner. But it's also worth pointing out that when it comes to mayoral races, it's also about figurehead, it's about personality. And Andy Street has been quite a big face here in the West Midlands, and one that's been quite popular. He's in many ways the anti-politician. He was the head of John Lewis before he took over as the mayor here. Well, to discuss all of this in a bit more detail, I'm joined by Rob Mayer, the political editor of the West Midlands. Very appropriate name for the day that we're on, Rob. Let's start by talking about the news overnight. A bit of a controversy here. Labour having to apologise for a source making some comments about the way they think the vote will go. It was you that spoke to the Labour source, so why don't you explain exactly what happened with that?
Yeah, this was a story I broke yesterday morning. Basically, Labour sources telling us early on yesterday that they thought they had lost this contest and putting the blame sort of firmly on the party's position on Gaza. And there was a quote from this source that said it was the Middle East that would win the race for the Conservative Andy Street, not the West Midlands. Once again, Hamas are the villains, was what this quote said. It was pretty quickly slapped down by the Labour Party, who described it as a racist comment, and they said that this person doesn't share the values of the Labour Party. And the campaign team here, Richard Parker's campaign team, are absolutely confident this is a close race. They're certainly not conceding anything this morning.
But let's talk about that independent candidate. While the wording of that statement did cause offence, and the party has apologised for using, language including using the word Hamas, coming out as a winner in this, the underlying sentiment we've seen across other parts of the country is that Sir Keir Starmer's refusal to call for an immediate ceasefire back in October may have cost the party votes in other places and potentially could have led to more support for this independent candidate.
Yeah, it's definitely a factor, and there are some early indications here that Ahmed Yaqub, the independent candidate, has done quite well. The health warning, I think, on that, so, you know, if he has done well in parts of Birmingham, for example, is we don't know if they are Labour voters who've lent their support to him over that particular issue, or if they are people who just would not have voted in the first place. So that is kind of yet to be determined. But elsewhere in the West Midlands, places like Walsall, for example, we've had some councillors in the Labour Party resigned last year over the Gaza issue. There's an independent group there standing on a pro-Palestine ticket in local elections, which were counted yesterday, and Labour didn't really make any inroads to them. So it is definitely an issue for the Labour Party. We'll find out whether they've managed to get that under control in this election. For the Conservatives, it's whether they can see off the challenge of Reform UK.
And just briefly talking about the incumbent Andy Street, if you look at his campaign literature, look at some of the speeches he's made, in many ways he's distanced himself from the Conservative Party, trying to kind of, if he does win this on his personal appeal.
Absolutely. It's become known as Brand Andy here in the West Midlands. As you say, on his leaflets, he doesn't mention that he's a Conservative. They're green rather than blue. No pictures of the Prime Minister. He says it's about the person, not the party. And you might remember he picked a very public row with the Prime Minister over the cancellation of the northern leg of HS2 just last year. So I think he's fairly successfully put some distance between him and the party. Will it be enough? We'll find out this afternoon.
Indeed, and Rob, you'll be with us all day here on the BBC News channel. Interesting points there, because of course, even though Andy Street has in some ways distanced himself from the Conservative Party, if he does win and becomes the mayor for another term, it will be a real glimmer of hope and success for the Conservative Party after a night of results which weren't so favourable across many parts of the UK.
Virginie Vaidyanathan there. Well, let's get some more analysis on the results that have come through overnight and this morning. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley joins me from the newsroom. Hi, Nick. So, yeah, bring us up to date on the picture so far.
We have a pretty good picture now, Samantha, actually, about what the local elections for councils in England have thrown up. There's only 5 or so left to declare. Yeah, 5 left to declare. And this is the picture. Labour up 173. That's a good result for them. They are confident that that shows they're on track to win a Westminster election. It's maybe not as good as it could have been. There's a world in which Labour would have done better, but they are pretty happy so far. Not happy Conservatives. Look at that number there, down 449. They're losing just under half of all the seats that they were defending. So a bad result for the Conservatives towards the worst end of their expectations, to the extent that at the moment, actually, on Thursday's elections, the Lib Dems are slightly ahead of the Conservatives. The Greens, worth flagging as well. Really good result for them, up 65 seats. This is what it means in terms of the vote share change from the last time these elections were contested in 2021. You can see there the Conservatives down 12%, Labour up 3%. A good result, but maybe again not quite as good as some in the Labour Party would have hoped. You can see the Lib Dems and the Greens are up as well. This is interesting, though, because this is parts of the country where the Conservatives had been in power in local councils and they're not anymore. And what's interesting to me is it's mixed. So you've got places like Dorset in the southwest where the Lib Dems took that council late last night. You've got Rushmore in Hampshire. You've got Redditch, which is a bit of a bellwether seat, which tends to vote the same way as the rest of the country. So this is a pretty grim picture if you're a Tory waking up this Saturday trying to figure out what this all means for you. Let's drill into a couple of the examples, actually, because I think they kind of show a bit of a picture. Rushmore, Hampshire again. You can see down the bottom, it's quite small writing, but if you look at all the blue there, Conservative control for years. They lost 8 seats on Thursday. Labour took 7. That's enough to give Labour control of that council. Dorset, as I was just talking about, what you would have probably called the blue wall, parts of the south of England where the Conservatives are pretty safe. Well, this really calls that into question, because look what's happened. Conservatives down 13 seats, Lib Dems up 13, enough to give them power. So really interesting result. And just one final example I want to give you, Welwyn Hatfield. This is where the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, has his seat. We've gone to some key wards in that constituency and spoken and figured out how people were voting. And have a look, Conservatives down 15%, Labour up 7. That equates to an 11-point swing, Conservative to Labour, which will make Grant Shapps really worried about how his seat looks at a general election. I want to talk very briefly, Samantha, about tactical voting. If you look over on the left here, this is areas where in 2021 the Conservatives were first but Labour were second. Have a look what happens. The Conservative vote is down by more than the national average. Labour's is up by more than the national average. The Lib Dems and the Greens don't go up much at all, which suggests that people who don't want to vote Conservative but want to vote for one of the other parties are coalescing behind Labour in these areas where Labour was the closest to the Conservatives last time. Have a look at this though. When the Lib Dems were second to the Tories last time, the Conservatives are still down, but the Lib Dems are the main beneficiary. They're up 5%. Labour's still up a bit, but the Lib Dems are, as I say, the main beneficiary. So I find that really interesting. It suggests that there's tactical voting going on for people who want to get a Conservative incumbent out. And just finally, on the big picture from the results we have so far, the projected national share. This has been put together by all the BBC experts and the election team trying to figure out if everybody had voted on Thursday and had voted on the same lines that the people who did vote voted, then this is what they think it would have looked like. That's interesting. Conservatives, 25%. To put that in context, that's their joint lowest result ever in a BBC projected national share from a local election result. So that's bad. Labour ahead by 9%, same lead as they had last year. 34% is good, but it's not quite the same levels that we were seeing when Tony Blair was in charge of the Labour Party in 1996, 1997, before his landslide. And just one final thing, that 24% of others, about half of that is the Greens. So they're very happy this morning.
OK, Nick, thank you very much for taking us through all of that. Time to catch up on all today's sporting action now. Here's Jane Dougal. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Samantha. Well, we start with Arsenal because they have the chance to go 4 points clear at the top of the Premier League when they host Bournemouth in just over an hour's time. Mikel Arteta's side lead the league ahead of the day's games, but Manchester City do have a game in hand. The Arsenal manager, though, says he wants his side to focus on their own results and not on their title rivals.
You just want to win, and to win, you need others to draw points, and you are hoping for that to happen. And then you have to manage your emotion, because it doesn't matter what happens on that day. There's still a lot of games and points to play. You're going to have to perform, prepare, and win the next match in order to maintain that momentum. And this is what we are trying to do.
After Arsenal's game, Nottingham Forest have the chance to go 3 points clear of the relegation zone if they beat Sheffield United. And then all eyes will be on Manchester City as they host Wolves. City defender Rico Lewis says Arsenal challenging them motivates the reigning champions to be at their best.
They're pushing us to the limit, just like last season. They're showing how dedicated they are as well to try and take the crown off us. But if anything, that's give us more of a reason to not let them and play even harder, play better and work harder.
Not just a big day in the Premier League, but also in England's second tier, the Championship. There's still a lot to be decided there, with all games kicking off in just over an hour's time. Ipswich Town can return to the Premier League for the first time in 22 years if they avoid defeat against the already relegated Huddersfield Town. Their boss, Kieran McKenna, is relishing the chance to play in the Premier League again and to secure what would be back-to-back promotions.
We know it would be an incredible achievement. We know what it would mean to the town, to the football club, to the players, to the staff, to everyone. And we're going to do our absolute best to try and make that happen, as we have done all year. There's no more we can do than that. We can't give more than 100%. The group have been given 100% day in, day out for, a really long period of time, and showed an incredible, consistent level of that.
It is the end of an era for Chelsea women. Their manager, Emma Hayes, is leaving. Defender Maren Mjeld has announced her departure as well this week. And in the last hour, their record goal scorer, Fran Kirby, has announced that she'll be leaving the club too. Kirby has been at Chelsea for 9 years, making more than 200 appearances in all competitions and scoring 115 goals. She's helped the club win 6 WSL titles, 4 FA Cups and 2 League Cups. Kirby said it had been an incredible journey. To snooker now, and Kyron Wilson and Dave Gilbert will finish their semi-final later in the afternoon session of the Snooker World Championship. But in the other semi-final, Stuart Bingham and Jack Jones have resumed their match. They started the session at 8-all. These are live pictures from the Crucible in Sheffield. Stuart Bingham, the 2015 champion, took the first frame of the morning session. But then a couple of mistakes from him has allowed the qualifier, Jack Jones, to get back in it. And as you can see, it's 9 frames all. He fought back to take that next frame. They're back to all square now. The other semi-final, don't forget, between Kyron Wilson and Dave Gilbert will resume in a few hours' time. In the NBA, the Orlando Magic levelled the series against the Cleveland Cavaliers after a 103 points to 96 win. It sets up a deciding 7th match. Meanwhile, the Mavericks secured a 4-2 series win in the first round of the NBA playoffs after beating the Los Angeles Clippers. Kyrie Irving scored 28 of his 30 points in the second half of the game for the Mavs, whose win books their place in the Western Conference semi-finals and a matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Clippers coach Tyronn Lue has been linked with taking the vacant LA Lakers job after they dismissed Darvin Ham. This was his response when asked if he would leave.
I don't really have a comment on that. I mean, it's great to be wanted. You know, that's a really good feeling, you know, but like I said, I want to be here, and hopefully we're able to solidify that.
And that's all the sport for now. Samantha.
Jane, thanks very much. We'll see you later. Now, finally, this half hour to one of the most read stories on the BBC News website, an app, and it involves the latest song from North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Let's have a listen. It's called Friendly Father. It's gone viral on TikTok with Gen Zers loving the synthy electro pop, possibly many oblivious to the lyrics, which include "Let's sing Kim Jong-un, the great leader. Let's brag about Kim Jong-un, our friendly father." It's the latest in a line of propaganda songs churned out by the communist state. Well, let's get more on this. We are joined now by our guest who can tell us more, Keith Howard, who's an emeritus professor of musicology at London's School of Oriental and African Studies, who visited North Korea in the 1990s, joins us from Banbury. Hi, Keith, good to see you. So tell us a bit more about these songs, why they're created, by whom?
Oh, that's a complicated question. Basically, if you think of North Korea as a monolithic state with one leadership and everything going down from the top, then you've got people coming up from the bottom. So your musicians, your composers, your groups, they're all there. They're all appointed by the state. And songs are created from the bottom up, but the lyrics are approved from the top down. So the lyrics have to be ideologically sound, and they tend to be distributed around. Everyone has to compose a song. Sometimes it's a competition. Sometimes it's a group of composers are approached. And then everyone chooses which song is most appropriate. And initially, the sort of censorship of what's right comes from the bottom and moves up until it's approved at the top.
And of course, media is tightly controlled in North Korea. So how are people accessing these songs? How are they disseminated?
Well, there are songs at the beginning of television programs every day. There are songs at the end. North Koreans tend to wake up to songs on loudspeakers, both in villages and in cities. Obviously, from apartment blocks, it's much easier. In apartment blocks, you have speakers which put out ideology, which put out announcements, but also wake you up, and you can't turn those speakers off. You can't change your radio or your television stations. They're fixed, and they're fixed at the factory. They're checked every so often, your television and radios. They're checked by the authorities to make sure you haven't tampered with them in case you could get something from, say, South Korea or China or anywhere else. So you only get the diet of songs and other material that's decided by state bodies is appropriate for you.
And do they work as propaganda tools?
Oh, yes, they do. And part of the point here is that the song has to be incredibly catchy. And it's catchy, not so much as K-pop, but in terms of readily graspable melodies, simple melodies, but catchy. words that go with them, refrains that come around every verse, and fairly simple dance moves, which I suppose in South Korea we saw, and we all saw basically with Gangnam Style many years ago, where everybody took up the dance moves and created their own lyrics. In North Korea, you can't do that, of course, but you can grasp those dance moves or the hand pointing, the fisting, everything like that, which makes the song sort of universally appreciated. That's the wrong word, but everybody takes it up, everybody sings it, everybody gets used to it.
Keith, just briefly, obviously you're saying it works as a bit of propaganda inside North Korea. We were just talking about how popular this has become with Gen Zers on the likes of TikTok. How does it work as a bit of propaganda outside of North Korea?
Well, it doesn't unless we consider what the words are. And I suspect most of the Gen Z people are not considering the words. The words mark a change in North Korea. It's a very significant song because it's positioning the leader, Kim Jong-un, as the father of all the mothers, the father of all the fathers, the father of all the people, which is actually something that's been reserved until now to his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, who was in control from 1948 to 1994. He died in 1994. So Keith, there's a change in ideology going on there.
Keith, absolutely fascinating. We're out of time. We must leave it there. Keith Howard there. Thanks very much for being with us. Stay with us here on BBC News. Plenty more to come.
Hello again, it's the bank holiday weekend, of course, and I think mixed is probably the right word to describe the weather over the course of the weekend, because while there'll be some warm, sunny spells for many of us, there'll also be some sunshine and showers as well. And this morning, certainly, it's been quite wet across parts of northern England into Northern Ireland. We'll continue with that rain, I think, in Northern Ireland into this afternoon. The risk of some showers, though, in the far northwest of Scotland with some sunny spells, and with the sunshine in the south, we may just see some showers popping off across the far southeast of England. Those could be heavy and thundery, but warm, sunny spells across many southern areas, temperatures 17, 18 degrees Celsius. We may once again have the warmest weather in the west of Scotland, 19 or 20 degrees. Now, through tonight, we'll continue with a bit of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, central southern Scotland, maybe a few thundery showers in the far northwest. Beneath the cloudier skies, temperatures down to about 9 to 11 degrees. But with a clearer skies, once again, quite a chilly night. Temperatures on Sunday morning starting off at about 4 to 6 degrees. Now, during Sunday, there'll be some cloud in Cornwall, parts of Devon, a few showers here, 1 or 2 showers developing elsewhere across England and Wales, but largely dry with sunny spells. Some heavier showers in the northeast of Scotland with some thunder, and maximum temperatures about 16 to 18 or 19 degrees. Once again, it will feel quite pleasant when the sun comes out. On into Bank Holiday Monday, we've got this weather front here across the south, and that's going to bring more cloud, some showers across southern areas of England, a few showers further north likely as well. And again, those could be heavy, maybe even a bit thundery into the afternoon. But for much of North Wales, the Midlands, into eastern areas of England, it looks largely dry. There'll be some sunny spells as well. Temperatures on Monday perhaps down a little bit, so 14 degrees there in Aberdeen, about 15, 16 Celsius further south and east across England. But going through the rest of the week, high pressure is building in. And when we see high pressure like this, certainly in the spring, it's looking dry, it's looking fairly sunny and actually quite warm as well. Temperatures will be responding quite nicely to that sunshine. So you can see here that the temperatures will start to rise 17 to 22 degrees Celsius by the end of the week into next weekend. So on the whole, a pretty settled week to come. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Today we're looking at the state of British politics.
Asking is technology ruining football?
Are we too obsessed with our...
Helen from Hull wants to know, how's the planet going to get?
And we'll explain why prices keep going up and up.
Also, Rach, did you know space has its own smell?
Really? What of? The world is fast-moving and can be confusing.
So let's talk about it.
5 Live Breakfast with Rachel and Rick. Listen on BBC Sounds.
It's the first US presidential rematch in almost 70 years, with the polls suggesting it will be a tight race decided by narrow margins. Get the latest headlines in the BBC News app. Get in-depth coverage from this historic election campaign on bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story on the US election with BBC News.
I see myself in the girls that we're fighting for.
Climate change is real, and we must act now.
Argument is less powerful than emotion, and negative emotion is more powerful than positive emotion.
More than anything else, when we have more feminist storytellers, things will change.
When big names talk, they talk to us.
This is BBC News, the headlines. Efforts to secure a deal for the release of hostages and a ceasefire in Gaza are intensifying, with the focus on talks in Cairo. The head of the CIA, William Burns, is already in the Egyptian capital, while a delegation from Hamas is expected there later today. Thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators have marched through New York City following the shutdown of another protest encampment. It comes after a turbulent week of protests on US university campuses. As Labour celebrates victories, Rishi Sunak has insisted the Conservatives have everything to fight for, despite the party losing nearly half of the seats it contested in local elections on Thursday. There'll be more mayoral results today. And police in Canada have charged 3 Indian nationals with murder over last year's killing of a prominent Sikh activist in Vancouver, which sparked a diplomatic row. Now on BBC News, it's time for Talking Business.